The difference in what we heard from the US ambassador to the United Nations today was that they're threatening to shut off trade with countries that trade with North Korea, aka China. Do you think that's the right way to bring China to the table here and do something greater about the North Korean threat?
Basically, yes. I think the Chinese have talked a good game for a long time, but they've really put very little to no serious economic pressure on North Korea. And we're going to have to make them pay a price for them to do it. Otherwise, you know, they'll pass UN resolutions, but nothing actually will happen. So we did a little, that is, the Trump administration about a week ago sanctioned one bank, Chinese bank, Bank of Dandong. That's the kind of thing you've got to do, but you've got to do it more and try to change how the Chinese see the North Korea picture. They see it as a problem for the US. We need to make it a problem for China, too.
So we just spoke to Stephen Roach, and he was talking about the idea of codependency between the United States and China in terms of the economic relationship beyond. How much leverage really can President Trump push and portray now with China? You mentioned the specific example there. There's also Taiwan, the South China Sea escalation. Trump is trying to push them and gain greater leverage, but I just wonder whether President Xi sort of sticks his heel in here and says, we won't be pushed, we won't be threatened. Well,
he may well say that. The question then would be whether the President Trump follows through and how the Chinese actually react if the Americans don't back down. I mean, this is in a certain sense a game here to see which of them will actually go through with what he says. The other question is, you know, how important is this to President Trump? There is this story that in his first meeting with President Obama, the newly elected Trump was told, this is the problem you will face. This will define your administration. And Trump has said, you know, this will not happen. We will not let them get a nuclear-tipped ICBM. Well, are those just words, or is he going to make this his more or less top priority?
Elliott, I wonder what you make of the argument by some analysts that maybe one way to deal with North Korea is to just accept the fact that it has nuclear weapons and focus instead on limiting the proliferation of it, the risks that a rising nuclear North Korea presents. The benefits to this would be that the country gets to downsize its conventional military. It would be able to divert resources to helping its own people and bring it back perhaps to the negotiating table. What do you make of that argument?
I don't buy it. I mean, the Obama administration accepted Iran as a potential nuclear power at the end of the JCPOA agreement in 10 years, now 9 years. If the Trump administration says, okay, North Korea is next, where does it end? If a real pariah regime like North Korea can be accepted as a nuclear power, how is there any country on the earth that wouldn't be accepted as a nuclear power? I don't think we should do it, particularly given what we all know about the nature of that regime. That would be the last country on earth you'd want to accept as a nuclear power.
We just have some live shots here of Air Force One, as you can see, seemingly preparing for takeoff. Elliott, I just want to come back to you on this point in particular. The other key player in this negotiation is Russia. And the Russian ambassador to the United Nations saying at this meeting, sanctions aren't the answer here. So in light of everything that you said, and I can hear you laughing here, what is the solution? Because you've got two very important players here, China and Russia, that do have veto power with the United Nations. I wonder what the risk is of unilateral action here by the United States to do something if others won't agree.
Right. Well, the Russians and the Chinese have a plan here, which may or may not include the UN. And their plan is get the United States into a negotiation with North Korea, under which they freeze nuclear testing for the moment, no more missile shots either for the moment, and we freeze all our exercises with South Korea. They have been trying to detach the American-South Korean military alliance literally for decades, I mean, way back in the Soviet Union. We should not agree to this. It would not only destabilize South Korea, it would begin to destabilize Japan as well. I don't think the Russians are going to do anything particularly helpful on North Korea, but we don't need Russian sanctions. We can begin, the United States can begin to create a kind of coalition of the willing We had one in the Bush years called the Proliferation Security Initiative of countries that are really willing to bear down on North Korean finances, North Korean commerce in nuclear goods, and begin, I would say, to try really to hurt the North Korean economy and put sanctions on companies that are dealing with North Korea, commercial companies and especially financial companies. We can do that. If the question is access to the United States and other Western markets or North Korea, I mean, that's pretty easy.
Elliott, when you look at, the perspective of North Korea as they see the devastation in countries like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, countries that don't have nuclear weapons, they say, well, we have to rush to get them, otherwise that could be our fate eventually. Have past foreign entanglements by the United States, or wars specifically, do they encourage countries to accelerate their nuclear plans?
Well, there is this view that the United States took the nuclear weapons away from, or got the nuclear weapons from Gaddafi in Libya, then the regime went down. So it's sensible to keep the nuclear weapons. I actually agree with that in this sense. The United States has tried to get Kim to give up, first his father, now him, to give up his nuclear weapons. From his point of view, I don't actually think that's very sensible, and he's not going to do it. So I think what we should be driving for here is a multi-year plan that would ultimately result in the collapse of the regime. I don't think you're going to get this guy, Kim Jong-un, to say, okay, here you go, here are the weapons. Better to look at it, in a sense, the way we looked at the Soviet Union or Romania. No war, just lots of pressure and ultimately the crumbling of the regime.